Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing DoTween. DoTween is a free piece of software, a framework that you can integrate into Unity, and it helps you to do animations and cool things that you wouldn't normally be able to do, or you would be able to do them, but it might take, a lot more work. So DoTween makes it really easy to add animations and cool effects to your project. Today, we're going to be building an app with DoTween, a small little app on Unity, just to demo and show you some of the things that you can do with the DoTween framework. So if you like this content, please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, comment down below, and let's get into it. So this, by the way, is the DoTween website, and it is actually a great resource for finding out more about this framework. They have all sorts of information, all the way from beginner to advanced. This is a very extensive documentation, which is part of the reason why it's so popular. You can see the documentation right here. It just goes through so much, and there's just so much material that you can look for if you need help. You can see these are all the different methods, and there's descriptions about what they do. And you have your scaling methods, your rotation methods, your move methods, all under this category of transform, sprite renderers, rigid body methods, so on and so forth. So if you get stuck while using this framework, this is a very, very good resource to use with a lot of information. Anyway, let's get into Unity and do the demo. All right, so now we are in Unity, and I have created this little scene right here, which is a small little game scene to demonstrate DoTween. We're going to be scaling an object, this cylinder. We're going to be rotating an object, which is this square. And yes, I did misspell rotate. I will correct that. And then we are going to be moving an object. So we're going to be moving this cube to this other cube. And this is all going to be done via DoTween. And you're going to see how easy it is to animate and add these effects just with a few lines of code. So let's do that. So before we actually get started with the Unity project, let's actually import the package into our game. So you can actually get this for free. This is DoTween Pro, which costs $15, but DoTween you can actually get for free, and that's the version that we are going to use, DoTween HotTween V2. And we're going to add this to our assets, and I'm just going to sign in. And I've already installed it. That's so I don't have to download it or install it or anything. I can just open it up in my Unity, but you might have to install it. There's going to be a quick loading time. It might take a little while, but once you get that finished, you will go into your asset package manager and you will be able to just import it, and you can just import everything. And you need to do this before we can get started with the scripts, and once you're finished, we can get into the code. Alright, so once you have that installed, we should have this folder right here, Demi Giant, and inside we have our DoTween folder and all of the different modules. We have a couple README files where you can learn more about the framework, but let's go back to our assets and get started with our first script. So create a folder called scripts, and we'll just do that really quick. Set this folder up, and let's create a C# script called moving. And this will be our moving script that we apply to our moving cube. Now, before I apply it, just a little bit about this scene in case you want to set this up. I preset this scene up to make this faster and easier so we can get right into the coding. Essentially, all this scene is, there's no scripts. It's just game objects that I created that we could manipulate. So essentially, I have a plane. I've added materials to these game objects and to this plane. If you look at here, this is the game view. I have a materials folder with different materials in it. And then I just have different objects set up in the scene in this kind of format that we can apply these scripts to. So that's all I've done. You can easily set this up just by looking at the way the objects are positioned. Now let's apply our script to our moving object. So let's go back to our scripts folder and click this, drag it over to move right. I've already done it, so I'm just going to remove one of those scripts, and we should have that all set up. And let's open up our script folder and get into it. So this is Microsoft Visual Studio. This is the typical scripting environment that's used alongside with Unity. I'm just going to expand this. Now the first thing we're going to do is add a using statement up here to import the DG tweening module. And that should just be DG and then tweening, and it should just come up automatically. Now we have full access to all of the scripting components inside the demi-giant tweening DoTween module, and we'll be able to just take stuff from there and use it. So the first thing we're going to do is move our cube. If we go back into our scene, we want to move our cube from this position right here, more or less, all the way to this position right here. That's the first thing we want to do. So in order to do that, let me just set that back. In order to do that, we're going to go back into our script, and we are going to set up two different variables. And these variables are going to be private vector3 variables. So type up private vector3, and we will do an original position. Original, excuse my sloppy typing. We will do a private vector3 final position. So originally I said I wanted to have the final position be fixed at that cube, but I think I want to edit the final position instead to make more of a demo out of this. And I want the final position to be customizable in the inspector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a serialized field which will allow me to do that. And you'll see why in a minute. And to do that serialized field, we just put the square brackets around it. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to get rid of this update method because we actually do not need this. And in our start method, we are going to set our original position. So our original position will equal the transform dot position, and this is the transform of the game object that is attached to the script. So the moving cube that we will attach this to, it grabs the transform and its position. Now we're going to set up a private method called move. And we're going to move the transform. So let's do transform.doMove. And you'll find it in this little drop down if you want to click it. And this takes two parameters here. And the first one is going to be the position, which is our final position. And then we will say the amount of time, which I want it to be about 3 seconds. And that's about it. And then we're going to call this method move in our start. Save the script. Okay, so now let's go back to Unity. And what we want to do is, first of all, I want to convert this into another moving block instead of a target. So let's actually rename these. Let's rename this to move 1 and move 2. Because I want to show the versatility of the script that we just created. And let's add this moving script to move 2 as well. And now you see our serialized field allows us to customize our final position. So that is exactly what we are going to do right now. So our first move cube, our move 1 cube, is going to move right there to that cube. That's where we want it to go to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this coordinate at the x-axis, and that's the only one I'm interested in. These two coordinates are not going to change. They're going to stay the same because it's moving along that axis. So I'm going to Command Z, bring it back over there, and I'm going to paste the position that I just got from moving it. I'm also going to paste the current coordinates of y and z because we want it to stay in the same tract as as I demoed right there. So that's the first one. Our second cube, we want it to go up like this, right? We want it to go up on the y-axis. And so I'm going to copy and paste the coordinates from the y-axis, and I'm going to Control Z to bring it back to its former position, and then I'm going to paste it in here. And that's what we're interested in. I'm also going to paste its X and Z coordinates as well. And that's just so that it can stay in the same straight line. And let's save our project and play to see what happens. And as you can see, they move up, and it's a very nice slow movement, about 3 seconds, like we programmed. Now I want to create a loop for these two cubes so they go back and forth. So I'm going to go back to my script, and I'm going to create a new variable next to original position, and we're going to call it current position so we can store that value. Now let's have our move method take a parameter, and we're going to make it a vector3 parameter, and we're going to call it pose for position, and we're going to change this to that variable. And then up here we're going to make our move method take in that parameter of current position. And at the start we want the current pose to equal the final pose. Now let's go back to our move method, and if we go down here we can do something really nifty. We can use something called onComplete, which basically means on the complete of this method, and we can call a new method. So let's call move, and we will just make a pointer to the move method, and we will pass in our current position again. And now we need to do a check to see if the final position is, or the current position is equal to the final position. And we will do this with a statement that looks like this. So this is called a ternary operator. It's a shorthand way of writing an if statement. Basically, we're going to set our current position equal to a ternary operator. So current position, if it's equal to final position, then we will set it to original position, else, and we represent it by that semicolon or colon, final position. We set it to final position. So let's see what happens when we go back to Unity and play it in the console. As you can see, our two cubes are now looping. So one of the cool things we can do with DoTween is we can actually control the movement of these cubes, and we can customize it even more. So one of the ways we can do that, if we hop back into our script, is through an ease, set ease variable. And to do that, we're going to create a new variable, and we're going to call it ease, and it's going to be of the type ease. Let's serialize this variable, just like we serialized our final position, so we can edit it from the inspector. We'll add the square brackets, and then let's go down here and add the setEase function. You can find it right there, and we will pass in our variable to do that. Now let's go back. You can see that if we go to our move one cube, we now have the ability to do all of these new settings. So you can play around with this a little bit, but let's see what some of these mean. So we'll go to outscene right here and just see what happens. Or let's do outbounce. You see? So now there's a little bounce. And it's very easy. These are all kind of built-in things that you can get with DoTween. You can get this in quad. It's a very kind of cool way to customize your movement without writing a single wool. You still write code, but not much. Now let's create our scaling script. So we've done the moving and we've experimented with that, but now let's see how exactly we can scale an object with DoTween. So create a new script and call it scaling. Now let's drag our scaling script to our scaling object over here and make sure it's all set up. And let's open up our script. Let's use our using statement for DoTween. We'll do DG and then .tweening. Let's delete our update method because we don't need it. And let's go to our start method and just do the transform of the object .doScale, which is another built-in method to DoTween, and we will scale it by maybe 2, and we'll do it in maybe 2 seconds. And we'll see what this looks like and we'll see how it works. So let's save it, go back to our script, and press play. And you can see it scales up massively. And I'll leave it up to you as a learning activity to figure out how to add more flair to this scaling script, add more customization to how you would scale it. Maybe you can change the values that you scale with, or you can maybe set ease like we did with the movement script. So that could be a very kind of interesting project to work on. Now the final script we will make is our rotation script, and we will add that to our rotating object, which is the blue cube right there. So let's do that really quickly. Let's create another C# script. Let's call it rotating. And let's do our typical, well, first we'll exit out of this and we'll open up our rotating script. And we will add our usual using statement right here using the demi-giant DoTween framework. And we will delete our update function because I don't believe we will need it. And let's also add this script to our rotating object. Now, what I want to do is go back to our script, and I want to essentially just copy and paste these variables right here because I want to show you that the same type of methods can be applied to our rotation. So I'm going to copy and paste these variables, and I'm just going to rename them to rot instead for rotation. And we'll call this current rot, and then we will call final rot right here, and we'll keep it serialized, and we will keep our ease variable as well. Now what I'm going to do is create a private rotation method. So we're just going to do that right now. We're going to create private void rotation, and this method will take a parameter. The parameter will be a vector3, and we will call it rot. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take this same method and logic that we wrote right here. We're going to just copy and paste that with our Tornian statement right there and save. And we'll just change all the variables. So we'll change the first one to rot right here, and we will change this method to rotation because we are calling it again. And we will change the current position to current rot. This is the exact same type of logic that we implemented last time. We're just doing it with rotation so we can get our rotation to loop like our movement. And we'll change the final position right there to final rot, and that to original rot, and there. Let's set our original rotation to the original rotation, which will be the transform.rotation, and we will add Euler angles. And just like in the last moving method or moving script, let's also do the same thing. So let's take the current rot and set it to the final rot. And we will also call our rotation method in the start method, and it will take a parameter of current rot. And now let's test this out in the Unity engine and see what happens. Now, we want our cube to rotate in a certain direction, so let's just get closer to the cube right here and see how we want this to rotate exactly. So we want it to rotate right here along the y coordinates, and yes. So why don't we rotate it like this? Why don't we capture the 90 degrees? All right, and let's press play and see what happens. And it disappears. So something went wrong, and this is always the problem with copying and pasting. So let's go back in our script and see exactly what happened. And I think I found the problem, and the problem is that we're using do move instead of do rotate, which is the key thing that we forgot. So let's put do rotate in here, and let's see if that changes anything, because before we clearly had it on do move, which basically just moved it to a crazy location. All right, now let's see what happens. And let's make sure that this set ease is on linear to start with, and let's test this out. And there you go. Now it's rotating, and it is doing this back and forth. It's bouncing from one position to the other, just like our move cubes, but with rotation. And let's do a few experiments with what we can do here. So let's do out cubic, see if this does anything. So it does. It kind of changes things around a little bit, makes things faster. Let's see what happens if we do in scene. All right, a little bit. I'm really interested in the bounce ones, though. So let's see if we can do the out bounce. And we get a little bounce to our cube, just like we have with our moving blocks. Now, one last thing I wanted to show you before I close out this tutorial is this set delay option that we can do. So, as you know, we are playing and we are rotating and we are seeing our rotation, but what if we want it to get a little slower as it gets close to the edge? Well, here's what we can do. We can actually go back to our script, and we can go to the end of this method right here, and we can just type in set delay, which is kind of an interesting DoTween method right here, and we just tell DoTween how much of a delay we want to set. So why don't we just do this and see what happens. This might be a bit of a long delay, and we'll wait for that to load. And now we have our delay, and it's set to linear, and let's see what happens. And it's a big delay. See how much of a delay there is before we get going again? So that's kind of how we can pause it in between its loop right there. We can set that delay so that it doesn't happen right away. That's some more customization that we can add to our blocks. And that's about it for the tutorial. I hope that you learned something from this. I hope that you took some knowledge away and you get interested in DoTween and using DoTween. And yeah. Now, if you liked this content, if you found it helpful at all, please like, subscribe, hit the bell button, Comment down below for the algo. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.